TV's just about to turn off. Give me a sec. See the blue light on me. Hey legends, this is I Am Manifestation. I'm your conscious manifestation coach, Cerise, and I help you get out of your own way so you can manifest your version of an awesome fucking life. In today's video, I wanted to talk about how there's talk amongst the law of attraction community, more the law of attraction community, okay? And I just want to also say, yes, I teach integrative law of assumption, but law of assumption and law of attraction are just the same thing. They're just different manuals for conscious manifestation for different types of minds. And now that I understand law of assumption, or conscious manifestation via law of assumption, I can now listen to law of attraction teachers and completely understand what they were talking about. Whereas before, what they were talking about sounded like absolute fucking gibberish. So you'll hear a lot within law of attraction if you've ever come across that kind of information when you were looking for answers or into conscious manifestation, et cetera, where people are talking about how when everyone raises their vibration, which, you know, I don't really talk here about vibration frequency, things like that, but those are all middle anyway, and those all happen when you do the work up here. And, you know, I teach this stuff too, because for a lot of people, mostly for the people who like the sound of law of assumption or find that conscious manifestation clicks for them or resonates with them over law of attraction. Sorry, I don't know why I can't get my words out today. They have a tendency to be coming from a background of, not always, but have a tendency often to have a background of hardships, heartbreak, trauma, things like that, where the human body, because we are living the human experience, stores memories in the forms of feelings, and then it gets caught in a loop unless you actually do the work to process and release those feelings. So you can do this all you want, but even though eventually rewiring this only will eventually rewire everything else, most people will get, I've said this in many videos, burnt out, unwell physically and or mentally, or just have so much doubt creeping up from the anxiety that they're constantly running on that they just give up. That either they choose to give up or they have no choice but to give up because their body is still storing all of that, and then really being often amplified by solely focusing on the thoughts piece. People often find that they do get burnt out, unwell, but also end up with like worse self-concept than before they started, even though they've been doing self-concept work. Anyway, tangent. So I don't really talk about it in the sense of like vibration frequency. I would talk more about feelings and states. They're all pretty much the same thing in the sense that they are the middle when you do the thought piece of conscious manifestation, yes. But again, you have to do the nervous system regulation work, because if you don't release and process those feelings, it's not just emotions, it's different. It's more than that, because crying will not be enough if you're coming from a place that I'm talking about. And really what I teach is like preemptively just sorting all this shit out simultaneously, which makes the thought piece easier, so that you don't have to learn the hard way like I did by listening to people who say just focus on the thoughts. Because I'll tell you, I was on top of my thoughts, and I was on top of my thoughts because I teach the shit and I can see when people are not, for a few years. And initially I felt good. I felt better than I had, but then everything turned to shit. I spoke about in other videos anyway. That's not what we're here for today. So long intro. When you do hear though that raising your vibration and frequency is something that we need to teach the whole world, because the more we work on ourselves and share how our lives have improved from doing that, it's not just about having like the tangible things that you want or the relationship that you want or the job that you want. It actually makes the world a better place in the sense that part of what you're doing in order to make yourself the version of you that can have the thing like that you want and also hold on to it, not just get it in, which is another reason why I teach my cheat codes in the integrative side of conscious manifestation as opposed to just focusing on the thoughts. When you become that version, more so the version who can keep it, right? Not just the version of you who can get it. The person who actually does the version of you who actually has done the work to be the version that can hold on to those things that come in effortlessly that you're wanting, that makes the world a better place because you're no longer operating from fear. You're no longer acting in a way that's trying to control and manipulate the physical world and the people in it. And when you're not doing those things, you're not, everyone is you pushed out, right? You're not making other people part of that. I don't really talk about attachment styles or anything here. I have an understanding of them, but for a lot of people, they can create like unnecessary limiting beliefs, and people start to identify as these things. And if you identify as them, you're not going to change them, but your attachment style is changeable, right? As long as you're not identifying with an undesirable attachment style, which is where, you know, people can kind of go wrong and look into all of these psychological things, because it can hold them as that version as they start to identify, like, this is just who I am, this, you know, and those things can change. And that can go either way. So someone with a secure attachment style can become anxious attached or avoidant attached or disorganized attached. And people with the disorganized or avoidant or anxious attachment can become securely attached. And the more we do the work on ourselves, the less likely we are to be the reason that someone becomes the undesirable versions of attachment, right? And then when people are anxious or avoidant attachment or disorganized attached, they affect those around them. Everyone is you pushed out, and then it has a domino effect and starts to affect how other people see themselves. People who are insecure and fearful and controlling and manipulative are people who then try to go on to manipulate the physical world, creating more and more of a domino effect of those things. When you work on yourself and you fix your attachment style, even though we don't do that here and I'm not an attachment style coach, the things that I teach will automatically rewire those, you know, considered to be undesirable attachments without you getting too much in your head and creating a limiting belief or an identity around those. That's why I don't really talk about them too much. But the more people do the work that I teach without thinking too much into things like attachment styles, et cetera, again, it's not a bad thing necessarily to know those things. It's just that you don't want to continue to, like, the more you continue to refer to yourself as that attachment style, the more you're keeping yourself in the reality where you are. So what I teach automatically changes those from the seemingly from the considered to be undesirable attachment styles to securely attached naturally, without all of the confusing information or the kind of information that people who tend to resonate with law of assumption, overthinkers, overanalyzers can tend to overcomplicate, right? So that's really it in a nutshell. When you become or the version of yourself that is no longer operating from a place of fear, manipulation, control, insecurity, you actually better the lives of everyone around you, and then as a domino effect, the people in their lives. And it's not just because you're naturally acting differently from what you've rewired, right? Because that's what comes naturally from doing that work. But it's also that you then become a positive example for people who see how you've turned your life around, how you've gotten the things that you want that you used to talk about in a way that seemed like those things were impossible for you. You become a better family member, you become a better parent because you will naturally raise your children or treat your children, depending on their age, in a way that teaches them to be secure in themselves as well, which means, you know, no bully is bullying someone because they're happy. They're bullying people because they've been affected by someone, and that person that affected them was bullied or mistreated or rejected by someone else. Queen Herbie has a lyric. Well, it's not her lyric. It's she's got a featured artist in the song. Let me. Okay, so the song is by Queen Herbie featuring. I don't know how this person, like, what they call themselves, because I actually hadn't heard of them until this song, but it's Ollie VVV. So I don't know if that's Ollie Triple B or Olive, I don't know. But the song's called All My Bitches, and the lyric that the featured artist, I'm not going to try and figure out what her name is right this moment, says is happy hoes ain't hating, and hating hoes don't be happy. Obviously, I sound extremely white saying that. And that's so true. When you're genuinely happy, you don't care about the haters. And honestly, the haters are only hating because they get a reaction out of you. So when you stop reacting naturally because you've done the work on you, you're focused on yourself and bettering yourself and remembering who the fuck you are, which is what you're really doing. You're not becoming the version of you who gets to have the things you want and hold on to them. You're remembering who the fuck you inherently are and have always been before anyone or anything came along and made you forget or doubt it, right? When you're genuinely the best version of you and you remember who the fuck you are, you stop being bothered by haters. Haters start realizing that it's not getting them anywhere. They also get inspired by you, even if they don't want to admit it, because they're like, oh, that person's turned their life around. I can't affect them anymore. What have they done to become so fucking unfuckwithable? You know what I mean? And yeah, so that's really why, like, there's just so many ways in which working on yourself betters the world as a whole. And the more people who do the work on themselves, which they will do from hearing stories of other people who do the work on themselves, or seeing the change in people for the positive, or seeing people go from seemingly unfavorable situations to their ideal realities, right? They will be inspired, they will follow suit, they will be taught if they're young enough, or they're looking for answers and come across the information that you share. Sorry. And then they will be motivated to make positive change, and then that will have a positive domino effect on the world. And the more happy people we have in the world, the more people who we have in the world that realize that the way that you actually find real true happiness in your life is to work on yourself and go inward, work on your thoughts, work on your nervous system, do more things that you enjoy, stay away from things that you don't enjoy, and the versions of people that aren't evoking those good feelings. Less people will stay in unfavorable situations around unfavorable versions of people, or allow people to, or like turn people essentially into the unfavorable version by moving into a reality where they are now encountering the unfavorable version of someone because they don't have a good story about themselves. They're still running on high alert. They're focusing solely on the thing that they want to be their source of happiness instead of doing the things that I teach. And to go through those, because I've mentioned those things a few times, like my cheat codes or the things that I teach, and not actually said what they are. So if this is the first time you've come across my shit on here, I teach my cheat codes. So I teach integrative law of assumption, where yes, the thoughts are the seed, but things can get stored. And we work on programming both simultaneously, as opposed to waiting for this to reprogram itself and then waiting for this to reprogram everything else, including our world and our feelings and our nervous system, et cetera, et cetera. And so we do that by doing self-concept, which you would have heard a lot of law of assumption teachers talk about, but they most won't talk about it the way that I do. It's not just a bunch of I am affirmations. It's also how you treat yourself is how other people treat you. Too many people are sitting at home saying, I am worthy, I am deserving, I am loved, I am prioritized, but they're not doing those things for themselves. So even if you can manifest the thing, personal situation, and that you want, you're still going to find that often you're still going to be doing the things that then move you back into a reality where things are not ideal. Especially if you find, and again, it tends to be the people who have had those hardships, heartbreaks, trauma backgrounds from my experience in coaching people and following, having, people follow and watch my live streams and me interacting with those people. It's often those people where the thoughts are not enough to naturally change how someone acts in their world, which is how and see their world and things like that. They still encounter situations that they find are just as triggering and sometimes worse, because they will put themselves in situations that they wouldn't have prior to coming across the law of assumption. Stay in situations that don't feel good. Keep entertaining the versions of people that don't feel good to be around. And it has the adverse effect than what you're wanting. So self-concept, yes, I am changing your story about you. I am affirmations, sure. But also the way you treat yourself is how other people treat you. Nervous system regulation is huge for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. We want to reprogram both, because if you've got an out of whack Kiwi accent came through real strong there, nervous system, and you're telling yourself a new story, you're most likely going to get burnt out from your out of whack nervous system and running on high alert, high anxiety for so long, a prolonged period of time, that you do find you get burnt out, unwell physically and or mentally, or the opposing thoughts that keep getting stuck on a loop because they started programmed or already had programming that the experience that you had that reprogrammed that story for you in an unfavorable way further perpetuated what you already felt about something that happened in the past. And it just gets caught in that toxic loop that every time you manage to manifest something in, still operating from that out of whack nervous system, gets worse and worse, and the experiences get more and more toxic. And then it's harder and harder to convince yourself that you can change things. So instead of getting to any of those very unfavorable points, we reprogram both at the same time. And the third thing is doing feel good things. So doing the things that you enjoy, more of those things, but often a lot of people, again, who come to law of assumption for something that they really, really want and come from especially those backgrounds that I mentioned, those people have a tendency to drop all the things that they ever did to bring any happiness into their lives and solely focus on the one thing, personal situation that they're wanting, expecting that to fulfill them when it comes in. And that's not how that shit works. Even if you can manifest it in, if you don't have other shit going on in your life that you enjoy, you're going to end up pushing that away or making it extremely toxic and unenjoyable for you to experience in your life. When you're a happy, healthy person, a happy, healthy, secure person, you are having a better effect on the world because the way you treat others is how they will then go on to treat others, and so on and so on. The example that you show others is what other people learn from, good or bad. So if you're being a good example of abundance, security, happiness, especially if people can see that that's a turnaround from where you used to be, that's inspiring as well as the fact that the people who are in your immediate environment who interact with you will benefit from the fact that you're not acting triggered, acting from fear, trying to manipulate and doing seedy shit to try and get what you want when you can have what you want just by working on yourself. If you haven't already, signed up for the no obligation to buy solid self-concept course waitlist that will be released in the new year. Only people on the waitlist get the opportunity to get the 50% off. Again, it's no obligation to buy, but you might be ready to buy it once it's released. And why would you not want it half price? As part of the theme of this video, I guess, even though I say it in every video, if you'd like to, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. It helps my channel grow so that I can help as many people as possible on a free platform. That's where I'm going to leave it there. You're a fucking legend, don't you ever forget it. And until next time, have a good one. Which you would have heard a lot of law of assumptions